focus on hitting your goals in every area of your business. Remember, the universe rewards the bold. A leader has to take the risks.
Welcome to Wealth on the Beach podcast with Daniel Alonzo, and I am your host. It's episode number 45. Do you believe it? 45 episodes, and we are so fortunate today to get to hang out with author Shane Dillon. He wrote the Franklin FI series while bicycling across Europe, laying the groundwork in Spain and reaching the conclusion near the Black Sea in Romania. This dude's been everywhere, man. Shane has a degree in finance from the University of Missouri, MBA from Sonoma State University, specializing in the wine industry. We're going to talk about wine today. And 20 years of stock market experience. He hopes this story of financial freedom will inspire the next generation of bike riding, yoga loving, world travelers to dive deeper into the world of investment leading to a future of financial freedom. What's going on, Shane? How you doing, buddy? What's your favorite wine?
Oh my goodness, you're going to lead with that, Daniel. I'm great. Right now, I am loving the Spanish Tempranillos. Prior to living in Spain, I was in Northern California, and you don't drink a lot of Spanish wines. But here in Spain, you go to the restaurant, you have the wine of the house wine, and it's always a red Tempranillo, and it's delicious, it's dry, and it works with everything. So my palate has changed a little bit since I've been in Spain. I'm a lot more easy to please. Let's put it that way.
Well, that's great, man. Well, I'm so excited. My brother is actually he's been working for the Wine Warehouse in California for a long time, which I'm sure you're aware of.
Yeah, I've worked with
and so I'm so fortunate that he brings lots of wines, and I don't have to learn about anything because he just tells me what to drink, and then I just drink what he tells me to drink, and if I like it, then it's great. So I'm not about to get into a wine conversation with you today, but I guarantee you this: if I was in Spain right now, me and you, we would be drinking some wine and having some fun for sure. So tell me, man, what are you doing in Spain, dude? Like, you're a long way from home, man. Where'd you begin?
Yeah. So 2 years ago, I left my career in the wine industry. I was there my career was started out 11 years ago. I started out as an intern, and I worked my way up to become the vice president of a winery in Northern California. And I got to the point where I didn't feel like I was learning anymore. I wasn't growing as a person, and I felt like there's more to life. So I put in my notice, and I decided to cycle across the United States. So I took off and cycled across the United States. And on my journey across the United States, I told myself that I was going to let the path reveal itself. And that's just what happened. I started applying to jobs all around the world, and I got a job in Spain. And when I completed my bike ride across the United States, I moved to Spain about 2 weeks later, and I've been here ever since. It's been 2 years now.
So so what was the bike ride across the United? Like, how did that happen, man? I mean, did you think you were like Forrest Gump or something like that? And you just like started pedaling and never stopped, or what was that about, man?
Oh, Daniel. So when I was asked that along the bike ride, people would be like, are you sponsored? Why are you cycling across the United States? And I'd look at them in the eye, just dead serious, and say, I want to be the first person to cycle across the United States. And the look you'd get from people, you'd be like, you're not the first person. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
No, it was, I really needed to get away from the grind. I felt like I was just working. And, in the wine industry, you work 7 days a week. People buy wine on the weekends. They don't buy wine on Tuesday and Wednesday. And as a wine executive, Tuesday and Wednesday is just as important as Saturday and Sunday. And I've been doing that for so long, I needed to catch up on time. So I just took off, and it was a way to get back to learning. It was a way to just break free and to get rid of all the stuff, all the stress in my life, all of the products and the schedules, and just get lost. And that's what I did.
Wow, that's very, very interesting, man. So tell me a little bit about your childhood. What did your parents do?
So my dad was a coal miner. I grew up in Southern Illinois in a small coal mining town. And my mom, she was a soil scientist and she worked with farmers. So I grew up very, very middle class. I've got two brothers and a sister. So we were always fighting over food. As soon as the food hit the table, it was eat as fast as you can because that was it. We definitely weren't poor, but we didn't grow up with a lot. I never had the newest pair of shoes or the newest video console. But I had basketballs and I had footballs and I had brothers to play with. I was always outside playing and hunting crawdads in the back creek. So I grew up a very simple life in the Midwest, and it taught me a lot about life. It taught me how to work. I started working when I was 16. I had to put gas in my car, so I took a job working the deep fryer at the fast food restaurant. And then my next job was working at the concrete plant in town. I was basically pulling bricks off of the conveyor belt and stacking them. So that's how I grew up and how I learned to work. And it's something that I've taken with me throughout life. I've always felt like I'm a worker, and I've never been sick. I've never called in sick. I'm proud to take my vacation days when I have them. But it's growing up in the Midwest and working from the age 16 on, I learned the value of a dollar.
We all do what we got to do. I worked at, a lot of people don't know, I was a sandwich maker at Subway.
Yeah.
So yes, we all do what we got to do to go work and make money and pay the gas and have the whatever transportation you can get. And so, yeah, I get it, man. I mean, and so when you went onto the trading floor,
Yep.
how did that happen? And how old were you? And how did you get your break into the investment world?
Yeah. So I went to the University of Missouri for college, which was about 4 hours away. That was the furthest I could travel from home. And I studied finance there. And I really worked hard to get internships. And in college, I had 2 internships. I interned in New York. I actually interned on the world's largest trading floor at the time. This place was huge, UBS, which it's sad because it's no longer in business, or that location is no longer open. But it was a really cool experience. It was an open cry trading floor, 100 yards, 200 yards long, and I was the coffee runner, basically. But I got to learn a lot about finance and all the different jobs that existed on the trading floor. And then I also interned at a bank in San Francisco. So I was very aggressive. I worked really hard to get my internships during college. And then out of college, I ended up taking a job in San Francisco on a trading floor. That was.
And what were you trading?
So it was institutional sales. So
okay.
Our clients were hedge funds and mutual funds and big money. So it was I was an assistant broker initially. So I started out supporting partners in the firm, and then later on I became a broker.
What was it stressful?
It's not necessarily that it was stressful. When you're starting out in any industry, I'm sure you can relate to this, you have to catch up, and you're competing. You're competing against people that have been in the business for 10, 20, 40 years. They're professionals. They're the best in the world at this. So I just worked around the clock. I'd stay late and read financials, and I would work on the weekends. So it wasn't so much that it was stressful. It was just a huge learning curve in the beginning, and I didn't have much of a life. And with that said, we worked New York market hours on the West Coast. So I was waking up at 3:30 in the morning, and I was on a call at 4:30 in the morning. So it's hard work for sure.
A lot of work. Now, so would you recommend somebody go into that type of business? I mean, well, what type of temperament do you have to do? Do you have to, like, how did that guy last for 40 years? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
What kind of person does that?
Yeah, that's a good question, Daniel. And it's kind of part of the reason why I got out of that industry. After about 3 years, I'll never forget to sitting on the trading floor and looking out across the room. And 70 or 80% of the people in that room were overweight, they were unhappy, they were in the business for greed. And then there was another, 20 or 30% that they were born to work on a trading floor. They thrived in that environment. And, I think you really have to be wired for that. To this day, I still invest. I love the stock market. It's enabled me to travel the world. I don't want to badmouth that industry at all. I think it is specific to your personality, though. If you're not, an extrovert and willing to fight over spreads, over trades all day long, then you have no business getting into that.
And so do you day trade now? Is that kind of how is that how you fund your lifestyle now, or?
No, I'm a buy and hold for life kind of person. So
okay. All right.
Yeah, I would consider myself a value investor. I went all in. I pushed the chips in 2008, and I've kind of been holding back for the last 2 or 3 years, waiting for the market to pull back. So I like to think if I'm going to buy a stock, I'm going to hold on to it until I absolutely need to take that money out of the market. I learned also on the trading floor that, there are two sides to every trade. So if I'm buying a stock, there's someone selling that stock, and most likely the person that's selling that stock is a professional. And it's very difficult to compete against someone like that that's being paid big money to be there. And if you're on the other side of that trade and you're just sitting in your bedroom, you're trading at a disadvantage. And again, there's people that make a living doing it, but I don't feel confident in my ability to do that, nor would I want to.
Right. And that brings on a whole nother level of stress and worry and hard work involved as well. So, because that's, you don't just wake up and know how all that stuff works. It takes years and years of practice, failures, adversity in that's why there was guys jumping out of buildings back in, whenever, so it's like, because they were on the wrong end of that trade at some point, right? So that's very, very interesting. All right, so let's look at okay. So first of all, so how do you fund your lifestyle? I mean, how is did you just save your money and now you're living off the dividends, or you're living off the what passive income you have? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I over the years I have worked to save, and I've envisioned this lifestyle for a long time. When I was working on the trading floor, I came up with this whole idea that I was kind of like a human corporation. I was studying all of these financials and learning how companies work, and I came to this conclusion that I can live my life, my financial life, in this way. And I set up financials for my life. I've got it all in an Excel spreadsheet. I've got all these metrics that I track. I take, at this point in my life, I take 10 or 20 minutes at the end of each month to kind of reconcile my human corporation. And another take on that is I actually look to acquire assets for my human corporation. So, how can I make myself better? First, what is an asset? An asset is anything physical, intangible, that creates cash flow. And that's, I live my life thinking about that. I've started writing books. I invest in the stock market. You can make money through blogging. There's other forms of income, but mainly the way that I've funded my life the last couple of years has been investing in the stock market.
Very good. Very good. And I mean, when you think about passive income, I mean, because obviously my podcast has a lot to do with passive income, and I'm always trying to bring, business minds that think in terms of assets and residual income and passive income and income that doesn't stop. I mean, how important is that? I mean, a lot of people are listening right now and they're going like, I work a job 9 to 5 and that's all I can think about. I mean, why is it so important that they take the time to learn about how to build more massive passive income?
Yeah, absolutely. So, there's traditional income that you're paid for your hours, and for every hour you work, you get paid $20, $30, whatever you make per hour. And passive income, once you create these assets, they throw off cash flow, and you get paid while you're sleeping. And I think it's important to diversify your life, just like you would diversify your investment portfolio. I don't feel 100% secure just depending on the stock market for my income. And that's why I'm starting to develop this book concept. I'm writing a personal finance series for young adults. So I've got 3 books that are in the works right now. I've published one of them. The second one's being edited, and the third one I'm writing right now. So that's a form of passive income. I think it's important to constantly be developing and to be proactive in your life. So many people are reactive in life, and that's what you're doing when you're working for a job and you're working to pay off your debts. When you're trying to catch up constantly, that's a problem. Once you can get to break even and start diversifying and finding other income streams, then you can really start to do some fun stuff. And your time is your most valuable asset. So you have more free time, the more passive income you have coming in, and you get to do fun stuff like cycling across Europe and hiking the Camino de Santiago. Next week, I'm going to take off and start hiking for 5 weeks across the north of Spain. So passive income is, it's the key to my life. I think you have to think about it, and it doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow build.
And so the market, you said you were holding back a little bit right now, and obviously keeping some cash positions right now just because you feel the market. Why do you feel the market might retract a little bit?
It's just looking at the historical charts. And it's one of those things that, being that I am dependent on the stock market for my income, I've kept my strong positions in the market, and I'll keep them in the market for the rest of my life until I absolutely need them. But some of my holdings that I didn't feel like I got in at the right time, I pulled out, and I'm just waiting for there to be a dip. And one of my kind of investment strategies is not to go all in, over the course of 1 week. I feel like once I start to see a dip in the market, I'm going to start dollar cost averaging over the next 2 or 3 years. So when I see that dip,
explain dollar cost averaging to everybody.
Yep. So basically, let's say the simplest example would be if you invest $1,000 every month on the 15th for the rest of your life, you're capturing the average of that stock price. So you're capturing the most expensive price that it trades for, and you're capturing the most inexpensive price that it trades for. So by investing $1,000 every month in that same stock over the course of, say, 5 years, you're getting the average. Whereas if the market's trading high, or it's if you don't know where it's trading at, and you get in at the high, at its 52-week high, and it trades down for the next 5 years, you're not making any return on that. So it's another way to diversify, and it's a way to reduce risk, basically.
Very good. And so, have you had any financial disasters, or have you been pretty consistent in your have you made any financial mistakes? I guess that's what I'm getting at here.
Yeah, I went to college.
All right.
I took out student loans.
That's a great subject we could talk about. Yeah, everybody loves that one. So
I think that is one of the worst things that's happening in the United States right now. To expect an 18-year-old kid to sign up for $40,000 in student loans, and it takes them 20 years to pay that off. It's not right. No 18-year-old kid is in that position to make that decision. I got lucky. I graduated with about $17,000 in student loans, and it took me 8 years to pay that off.
Wow.
But I learned my lesson, and it taught me about personal finance. As soon as I got that first student loan bill, I worked really hard to pay it off. I mean, it lit a fire under me. I was pissed. You know, I didn't know what I had done until I graduated college. It was a rude awakening.
Well,
But
I mean, I think that might, Shane, that might be the next big bubble that bursts is the student loan crisis. I don't know, what is it, trillion or some couple trillion now or something like that? I mean,
yep, and there's no getting out of them. I've got so many friends that are six figures in debt over student loans. You can't get out of them. For the rest of their lives, they're paying those off. And it's a decision they made as an 18-year-old. It's a horrible thing.
well, and then the fact of the matter is that most people don't even go into a field that they went to college. So that I just paid $50,000 and I'm never going to use that information. Really, I'm never going to. Now, they say, well, you know, you got the experience and the college life and all that. That's a bunch of bullshit, because you got a lot of experience just traveling all over Europe, right? And traveling across the United States. You got a lot of experience, right?
Or Daniel, what about my best friend that I grew up with? He's a plumber back in Southern Illinois. He has, you know, 2 or 3 investment houses. He lives on 20 acres with a pond. He's got all the toys he wants. He never went to college, and he's always been, you know, net positive and made money. So there's alternatives. You have to be passionate about, you know, being an electrician or a plumber or whatever the trade you decide to go into. But back to like the lessons I've learned in the actual stock market, I think one of the most important things that I did, I learned how to invest on a small amount of money. So when I was 22 years old, I started investing. I started day trading. I started investing in penny stocks. I started, you know, playing with options. Fortunately, I only had, you know, $1,000 to lose. So if you lose 20% of $1,000, you've lost $200. And that to me is an education in itself. If the average college class costs $2,000, you know, what's losing a couple $100 in the stock market? And in the end, you actually learn from it and you start making from it. So your education in the stock market pays for itself. And I preach all the time to learn with a little, you know, get in, play around, figure it all out. You know, don't be afraid of losing a few $100s. That's when you learn to become an investor. And just like anything in life, the more data you can compile, the more you can train your mind, your computer, how to manage your life and make better decisions.
Why did you call the book Franklin F.I.?
So the Franklin Fi. I've read a lot about Benjamin Franklin, and Benjamin Franklin, there's a book called Art of Virtues, and he documents, I believe there's 13 or 17 virtues, and it's basically a way that he's introduced discipline into his life. And I'm a big fan of discipline. I've got my own system that's kind of a take on Benjamin Franklin's Art of Virtues. So he inspires me every day. You know, it's a list that I look at, and most days it reminds me of his writings. And then the Franklin
Can
Five.
Can you share a couple of those virtues with everybody?
Yeah, his virtues are more like moderation. So, you know, drink in moderation, spend in moderation. My virtues tend to be more kind of goal driven. For example, the first thing on my list is to complete my morning routine. So every morning I wake up, I meditate, I do 5 or 10 minutes of yoga, and then I write a page in my morning journal. So that's a check on my list every morning. Another thing that I do is I have an old grammar book from college, an old English textbook, and I'll do an exercise from that textbook each day. So that's another check on my list. So those are ways that I have slowly developed kind of focus and my philosophy, or just a direction in my life. So back to why I called it the Franklin Fi. So the main character's name is Franklin Fi, and Fi actually stands for, you know, financial independence. It can stand for financial intelligence. I wanted to create a fun, exciting novel to teach kids about personal finance. we're not given personal finance classes in high school or in college for that matter. I studied finance, and I don't think I took a personal finance class. Took lots of finance classes, but I didn't take any classes to actually teach me how to manage money. So I wanted to provide that first personal finance class to kids. And I do it through Franklin Fye and his friends. They all get jobs. They all stumble through the process of going through interviews. And then Franklin gets this idea that he wants to learn how to invest in the stock market. And it tracks them learning about investing in the stock market and making the mistakes that I made. It's basically a book written to my 16-year-old self. If I could travel back in time and say, Shane, read this book, your life will be a lot better for it. That's the book that I wanted to write.
And how long did it take you to write that book?
Well,
the first one.
The first one. So for 4 or 5 years, I had this idea, but the idea was to write a textbook for young adults, a personal finance textbook for young adults. And I couldn't get past page 15. It was a disaster. And then I started bicycle touring, and I learned an invaluable lesson. So when you take off on a cross-country bicycle tour, you have to find a way to conquer this humongous goal. So to cross the United States, I cycled 4,000 miles. If I thought about cycling those 4,000 miles, from day one, I would have never crossed the United States. How I figured out how to cross the United States is I broke it down into daily goals, into achievable goals that were easy. I just had to get started to complete them. So I cycled on average about 70 miles a day to cross the United States. And I used that same concept when I sat down to write this novel. Last year, I decided that I was going to write a fun personal finance novel for young adults. And I worked it backwards, just like I did my bicycle tour. I said, all right, I want to write roughly a 180-page book. And I've got 90 days over the course of this summer to write my book. So if you simply take 180 pages divided by 90, that's 2 pages a day. And when I came to that realization, I thought, this is too easy. So I actually upped my page amount to 3 pages a day. And I wrote my first book in 2 months, in 60 days. So I had cycled from Spain. I was in Serbia at that time when I finished that book. And I was so pumped that I went and bought another notebook. I write pen and paper. And I started my second book. And my process works because I finished my second book in the next 60 days. So I wrote 2 books last summer.
Wow. And that is, to me, a great teaching on how to overcome procrastination right there. I mean, what you just taught us right now, if anybody wants to know how to overcome procrastination, that's how you do it, is you break it down into bite-sized pieces. Whatever it is that you want to do, you break it down and then you execute the plan.
Yeah. And I think in the beginning, the most important thing is you set goals that all you have to do is start. You can worry about your difficult goals down the road once you learn discipline. But how I started my morning routine, I started doing 100 jumping jacks. Who can't wake up and do 100 jumping jacks? It takes a minute, And then from there, I started meditating. I started a yoga practice, and I started writing in my morning journal. But those all came later. It all started with 100 jumping jacks.
That's it. I love that. And I do 60 to 70 push-ups a day. So yeah. I'm up to about 65 a day on average. And so it's kept me fit for now years and years. If I don't go to the gym or if I don't do my full routine, as long as I do my 65 push-ups, I'm good for the day. I mean, if I need to be good for the day, I'm good for the day.
Yeah. And you're starting off with a win. Like out of the gates, you won.
Every day.
Yeah.
Every day. Yeah. If I don't work out all day long, I can at least say I did my 7, but whatever. So yeah, I love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Okay. Hey, so check this out, man. I know why you wrote the book. Okay. Obviously you believe in financial education. I mean, how important is financial education? Not just for kids, but come on, there's a lot of adults right now that are on this podcast and they're not educated, man. They're clueless when it comes to money. How important is this for them, man?
the thing that people don't realize is we all have relationships. We all have a relationship with money. And you've had a relationship with money since you were probably 10 or 11. As soon as you figure out you want to buy something and you ask your mom for it, that's when your relationship starts. So to me, the sooner you come to terms with, I play a role in society. Money plays a major role in this system. And I've got to develop my relationship with money in order to succeed. Once you come to that realization, you stop ignoring your expenses. I think the simplest piece of advice I can give for my own personal finance philosophy is I track my profit and loss every month. So that's basically income minus expenses equals profit or loss. And people say, "Oh, I don't know how to do that." And then I say, "Well, what's 2 minus 1? It's 1." It's as simple as that. So it's income. So everybody knows their income minus expenses, and expenses is where a lot of people, where there's a disconnect with a lot of people. They're afraid to look at their expenses, and it might be because of student loans. It might be because of credit card debt. But if you're afraid to look at your expenses, you have a very bad relationship with money, and you're doing yourself a disservice. One of the things that I did early on was I started tracking every single expense. I only did this for 2 or 3 months. I didn't want to go too crazy with it, but I tracked every single expense for 2 or 3 months, and I'd break it out into groups. And then once I had it broken out into groups, I could analyze, where my money was going and how I could reduce my expenses. And I think that is a really important thing for everybody to do. You need to know how much you're spending. I know I have a daily budget now, and it's something that in the beginning, maybe the first 6 months, it was difficult to remind myself how much I could spend each day. But now I've trained myself to know exactly how much I can spend each day, and I spend probably half of that every day. So it just takes practice.
I think it's interesting because a lot of what you're talking about is exactly what I did. And you know a little bit about my story. I mean, 21 years old, by the time I was 28, I had $1 million saved. And that happened because I figured out that when I was broke, if I could save, 20, 30, 40% when I was broke,
yeah.
Imagine when I'm making huge cash flow coming in, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so what happened is I carried that same philosophy of living like I was broke. Because at one point I was broke. I was making $7 an hour. I had no money. Yeah. So, but I was saving a good chunk of that income when I didn't have a lot. And then of course, when I had a lot, I was still able to save. I mean, there was a point in time where I was saving 40 to 60% of my income. And I was educated, thank God, into know where to put the money, when to take it out, when it needed to be taken out. And I made good financial choices. And so I think that a lot of people don't realize that a lot of people say, when I get rich, I'll handle my money better. But that's not true.
Yeah.
You're going to handle your money when you're rich, how you handle your money right now.
Yeah.
And I just think that if you don't have control over a budget, I've always had a budget. Now I have my budget on Google Docs, so I can access it anywhere I'm at. And sometimes I'll sit there and I'll just say, I'll be at a park and I'm like, you know what, I want to check out, what my budget is. And I usually do a good, half an hour to an hour a week where I'll sit down, make sure I categorize all my American Express guy. I like to put everything on credit cards. Now, again, obviously I have a bigger budget today than I did back then. And so it takes a little bit more time, but I want to make sure that I'm not overspending on certain areas. I'm not making sure, I don't want to pay late fees. I don't want to, get charged on things that I shouldn't be getting charged on. So I manage that kind of stuff. And it's only a very small period of time of my life to make sure that my relationship, like you said, my relationship with money is correct. And I don't have a problem. And sometimes I may say, man, that month, I'll tell my wife, like, look, we just freaking went crazy this month. We need to we need to chill a little bit. You know what I mean? And I like that. I like that I can know when I'm out of balance. but I also know, I love the feeling knowing that there's enough, that there's an abundance mentality, that there's enough there to give me peace of mind. So does that make any sense to you
Oh,
at all?
absolutely. No, it's kind of a thread running through our interview. It's, it's simplifying your life, and it's being proactive. You're not reacting to your expenses. You're being proactive. You're on top of it at all times. And also, to kind of circle back on what you're talking about with keeping your spending in check, I spend like I'm a college student. I live in a nice place, but every Sunday night I make 2 big pots of soup because I feel like it's difficult to get enough vegetables. So I make 2 big pots of vegetable soup, and then I freeze them in individual servings. And every day I have at least, my vegetables through my soup. So that's a practice that I've carried with me throughout my whole life, and it's a way to stay healthy. And each one of those meals I think costs like $2. Yeah, and I enjoy it. I really enjoy vegetables.
I got to say something though, because you're a young guy, right? How old are you?
38.
38 years old. You're a young guy. And now, you're not married, right?
No.
And you don't have kids, right?
Nope.
Okay. So I know what people are thinking right now, right? They're thinking, well, there's this young guy and he doesn't have kids and they don't know my situation. And I got, 5 kids at home and it costs a lot of money and, and address that just for a moment, because, people are thinking that, like, I can't do what he's doing because I got all of this.
Yeah.
How do you address that?
Daniel, it all goes back to being a doer, not a complainer, not a worrier, not a doubter. You make strong decisions in your life and be conscious. I think that's one of the biggest things I've learned over the last 2 years is how to be conscious and to think about life. The decisions we make, they improve our life. And if you're not conscious, you start becoming reactive and your life is more difficult. So, be conscious, be a doer. Don't complain, and don't always point fingers at someone else. If you want to change your life. And if you don't know how, start with simple, achievable goals, and your life will slowly start to change.
And another thing I would just say to some of those people, like, hey, wait a minute, instead of getting the double, 2 doubles at In-N-Out, right? Yeah. Maybe you just get 1 regular hamburger. Number 1, it's better for your health. And number 2, instead of getting that extra large Coke, why don't you get the water with lemon? And they even give you free lemon there. You know what I mean? And on top of that, why not share a meal with your partner? If you are married, why not have a couple of the kids share the meal? Now, I can afford any meal there is, and I'm completely financially free. But if I go to a restaurant, if we go to Fleming's and we have a really nice steak and it's a 12-ounce steak or whatever, and I know my kids are not going to, eat a 12-ounce. My 13-year-old daughter is not going to eat a 12-ounce steak. I'll have them share the dang steak. You know what I mean? So it's just little things like that throughout your day, throughout the course of a month could save you hundreds and hundreds over the course of a year, could save you thousands of dollars. People say, well, I don't have $200 to invest every month. Well, if you made a couple of simple choices every single month, there's money back in your account. Get financially educated, take that money, invest it. It's how awesome is compound interest?
Yeah. It's amazing.
Come on, dude. What is compound interest anyways, man?
It's interest on interest. So if you invest $100 today, the historical average return on the stock market is 7%. So 7% of $100 is $7. So the first year you make $7, the second year you make 7% of $107. So that's, $115 or whatever. So it compounds every year. In my book, there's a chapter about compound interest, and I write about if you invest $100 every month from the age 16 to age 64, how much money do you think you'd have, Daniel? $100 a month. $100 a month from the age 16 to 64.
I don't know. I'm guessing 700,000. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
$500,000.
There you go. There you go.
And I mean, okay, so you can't invest $100 at the age of 16, but you can invest 20, you can invest 50. And then in your 20s, you can invest 150 or 200. In your 30s, you can invest
Exactly
thousands. I mean, that is what compounded interest is. And that's why I invest in stocks and I leave my money in those stocks to allow compound interest to do the work. It's passive income. But back to like the doubters is, you and I, we have conditioned our lives to get to this point. And every day that we go through life, we are gaining these small victories and we get stronger, we gain in confidence. And as each day goes on, it becomes easier and easier. Like, it's easy for us to sit here and talk about personal finance, but there was a time when we started from zero, and it was compounding interest in a different sense. It wasn't compounding interest on your money. It was compounding interest on your experience. It was compounding interest on the information, the data that you're entering into your brain, your computer, in order to become a better person and to get to the point where you want to be.
Good stuff, man. I could do this for another couple hours, man. Good stuff, dude. Okay, so check this out. Got some real quick questions for you. I'm going to throw some stuff at you, man. Do you have a scar, and how'd you get it?
Oh, do I have a scar? Yes, I do have a scar. You probably can't see it on the video. Okay. When I was 8 years old, I was over at my at a neighborhood friend's house, and he's 3 years older than me, and we were boxing, and of course with no gloves. This was back in like WWF times, and we're throwing each other around boxing. And he swung at me, and I ducked, and I hit my face just right below my eye on a countertop, and it just split wide open. And there was no parents around, so we panicked, and we tried to put Band-Aids on it. And to this day, I still have that scar.
What TV show is your guilty pleasure? Any show that you watch?
I don't watch TV.
Okay. All right. There you go. That's a good answer.
So how I came about this, in college, 15 years ago, I spent one Sunday just binge watching TV. I was hungover after a long night of partying. I watched TV 6 or 7 hours that day, and something just like lit me up. I stood up. I came to this realization, like, I'm wasting my life. I'm wasting my time. I pulled the cord out of the socket. I took the TV and I threw it away in a dumpster, and I've never looked back.
Oh, that's awesome. Great story, man. Out of all of your life, your dreams in life, what's your biggest of all? The biggest dream you got, man.
Yeah, interesting.
The biggest dream you got.
I actually wrote about this in my morning journal last week, and it was a little bit different. Where do I want to be in 20 years was the title of my morning journal entry. And I started writing down everything that I wanted in life. And about 90% of it I already had. I'm living abroad, I'm traveling, I'm learning, I'm creating. I think the thing that I am missing in life, I would love to find someone to go through life with me and to enjoy these things with. I hear your story about you marrying your high school sweetheart. That's magic, man. That's really cool. And that's something that I'm jealous when I see other people that have that. So that's I guess my biggest dream in life.
All right. Awesome. Hey, look, this has been fantastic, Shane. You are a really bright dude, and you inspire a lot of it. So you're jealous of some things over here. Well, I'm jealous of you on a lot of different avenues. I mean, number one, you travel the world, and I love to travel. And so when I come to Spain, I'm going to call you up. We're going to go drink some wine. Okay. So
yeah, absolutely.
I'm not kidding. I mean, I love to travel. That's my favorite thing to do. I don't get to do it as often, and I don't, bicycle around the world, but I'm so inspired by that kind of stuff. You have no idea how inspired I am by you. And I'm also inspired by you because you, in 2 months, got up and wrote a book. You know what I mean? And I just think that that's awesome. And not to mention, you wrote a book for young kids to understand and get better educated. So I'm on board with you, dude. Okay. So send me that book, whatever we got, or I'll go buy it on Amazon or whatever. But I'm telling you, like, I mean, this is an inspiring thing of, of what you've done. And so, God bless you for that, dude. You're a stud, man. But I just want to know, how can my audience connect with you? Because I know everybody's going to want to buy the book for sure. Yep. All my audience, they're all going to buy the book and they're going to give it to their kids. I'm already thinking, I'm going to read it myself for sure, but I'm going to give it to my 17-year-old son and my 13-year-old daughter. So they're each going to have a book. So I'm going to at least buy 3 books today.
Right on.
And I'm just telling you. But I just think it's so important that people get educated. Tell us how we get the book, man.
Yep. So you can find it on Amazon. That's the fastest way. And I actually just finished the audiobook too. I hired a producer to do it, and it's awesome. He's got an exciting voice. When I listen to it, I get goosebumps because he's brought my story to life. So you can get the audiobook on Amazon as well, or Audible. You can find the paperback and the Kindle edition there as well. You can also find me online at thefranklinfi.com. And I have a page on my website that you can buy the book through. It'll link you up with Amazon. And then I'm on Twitter and Instagram under the Franklin Fi.
Fantastic, man. Well, hey, I just want to remind everybody to follow Shane on Instagram, okay? The Franklin Fi. And follow him on Instagram, on Twitter. He's on Twitter. Latest talk, he did an interview on millennial money. Check that out. Website is franklinfi.com. But follow us and make sure that you like his stuff. We're signing up people. Just want to remind you guys, we're signing up people every day. I have a Wealth on the Beach club that every week I teach people how to build massive passive residual income in their life so they can have freedom to do whatever they want to do whenever they want to do it. And check that out at alonzoacademy.com. And as always, subscribe to my YouTube channel for tons of valuable content. Remember to dream bigger, but also make sure that you do it now. God bless you. We'll see you at the top.